Welcome to the Prompton Podcast, the podcast where we separate market myths from mortgage meltdowns and decode the fine print of real estate so you don't have to. I'm your host, James Walker, here to guide you through the twists and turns and occasional real estate horror stories. Ladies and gentlemen, buyers and sellers of all ages, welcome to the Prompton Podcast. We are here today on a beautiful, rainy Vancouver Tuesday. We've battled through vacations, mass sickness, and everything else to finally get back here and do a second episode. So thank you for joining us today. Brian, what's new? Let's first get the elephant out of the room and talk about your fancy new swag.
Taxes, exactly, courtesy of the Canadian government. I mean, we've got a stamped election called, so it's going to be a fun 3 weeks in front of us here. Death
by taxes, though. It's a good name.
It's
a good name. It's up there with Merchant of Debt.
Yep, similar. Still on that website.
Yeah. Do you actually have that anywhere else?
No, I just have the website. I haven't done anything with it yet.
I'm a gamer, and I can always picture whenever I see that, like you being a little avatar jumping around in like World of Warcraft called Merchant of Debt, just like hacking.
I used to play video games. I don't anymore. I wish I had time.
It would really work well. It
I
would be a
think
good
it
name.
would.
Like it's a good gamer tag.
My trademark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I should actually.
You should.
Don't air this.
We're also joined by James. I gotta get this right one day. James DeHust.
DeVoost.
Why do I want to say H all the time?
I have no idea.
I don't know. HST.
Dyslexic.
In my brain. Dyslexic.
Yeah,
It's definitely.
it's
definitely
DEB.
What's new with you?
Not much. Just markets are in flux, job numbers, CPI, Bank of Canada meeting. So not much. Not much.
Not much at all.
Not much at all.
You're just kind of bored.
Oh, we're just watching it implode. So right now it's quite interesting to see how lenders are responding. There's some news we'll share, I guess.
We had Bank of Canada said, was it Bank of Montreal gets 50% rate cut? They said 50% chance of rate cut?
Well, I mean, the news this morning is that the U.S. Fed, who prior to 25 said they're not going to cut, then they said, well, we'll maybe cut 25 points, and now this morning there's a 40% chance they'll cut in the next 48 hours in an emergency meeting, and now they're forecasting to cut 1.25.
Is this Canada or U.S.? Right?
That's the U.S. Fed. That just happened. That was the news of this morning in the U.S.
When you force their hand this hard, what are you going to do?
They want them to cut.
They've got a lot of debt to refi.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, and it's coming up, so they need those rates down.
$38 trillion or something?
Yeah, 40 trillion is...
40 trillion, but somewhere it's a trillion.
Astronomical.
It's trillions.
We're trillions here, so they're more than trillions there.
Yeah. So
trillions with half, or not even half, 16th population.
Yeah.
And we have a good spring break. Brian, where'd you go?
We went down to the desert, took a week away.
When you say the desert?
Palm Springs, Palm Desert.
Yeah.
So
no kids. I just stayed and worked, so it was fine. It was great. Traffic commute was great.
I think it's called glazing yourself. Say, I just stayed home and worked. Someone had to stay home and man the helm while the rest of us went away.
The challenge with the schools is spring break is 2 weeks long, so you can't sit for 2 weeks with kids. That's too long. That's way too long.
No, you're asking for it. That's doom.
Yeah, you have to take a week.
Exactly, and I think it pissed rain the entire time here too.
Yeah, it's just been nonstop. I think we got one sunny day on Saturday. And
I know.
That was it.
It was a glorious Saturday.
It was.
It was nice. Okay, let's get back into it. So today, I think Mayor Kim Sims, what's his name?
Ken Sim.
Ken Sim.
I need you guys for my details.
Kenny G.
There you go. I just want to get this out of the way. He released the Downtown Vancouver report, and for the first time since 2020, we're at a downturn of people visiting Vancouver, and they keep talking about Granville Street. And for listeners out there, I think we have like 4. I don't know when the last time you've been to Granville Street is. When was the last time?
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID?
Yeah.
James?
2010 Olympics. 12 years. I drive by it and just kind of wave.
Well, so what I found interesting was they had a whole timeline of the great things that are happening in Vancouver, and specifically Granville Street. They're like the FIFA is coming here in 2025, whatever the hell it is. Yeah, if that makes money or not, who knows? They actually are so desperate with Granville Street. Have you ever heard of the Rec Room?
Okay. Yeah, I've been there. Actually, that was the last time I went to Super Bowl. It was awesome.
Yes.
Great time.
The one in Granville Street or the one in Brentwood?
One on Granville Street.
Okay, so there you go then.
Yeah.
But that was there's so little happening on Granville Street that they actually had this in their timeline. Like the Rec Room opened. Oh, Jesus Christ, it could be anything in the world. And that's what you put?
Yeah. Well, it took up 3 vacant commercial sites.
Did it? I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
so
it's awesome. It's like 3 levels down below. It's like mini golf, tiki themed. Then the mid-level is like your sport, like all your sports bar, and then your second level is like more kind of sports and all these active video games. So kind of
Nice.
definitely more towards the millennial kind of zennial vibe, and it's awesome.
Our producer, Amy, whatever you say, she's over in the corner. You got to get us a sponsorship now.
Honestly, that's the only reason I would go to Granville is the rec room.
We need some free
Part
passes
of
now.
the issue with Granville, though, when you look at it, I mean, the province bought the Howard Johnson Hotel during the COVID period
Did they?
there.
The
So
HJ.
they bought that and turned that into an SRO, right? And what was it, Oro nightclub that's down below it? I think they've been flooded out like more than a dozen times, right? At the end of the day, so you put low-income housing, government-bought hotel turned into SRO in the smack dab
Where's
middle
the
of
Howard
Granville
Johnson
Street.
there?
I don't know what the cross street is. You know what that cross street is? It's not.
No.
It's
Did you
not-
ever stay
it's
there
not
in the-
Drake. No,
the
maybe it's maybe. No.
So you had a good night on Granville. You could stay
Oh,
there.
it's the underground.
Yeah.
Is it a how? It's kind of
it's
there.
between
Yeah.
Drake and Davy on what is
It's
east side
this
of
side.
Granville.
It's
Yeah,
just like up there.
yeah,
That's
just right
it.
up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
I haven't been there in so long.
But they bought that hotel and turned it into an SRO
Really?
at the end of the day.
But
So
then if you walk up and down, like I drive up and down every now and then, I walk by there to go to sport. It's just kind of gross. It's supposed to be like you've been to the entertainment hubs
Yeah.
of other places in the world. Like we're going to Tennessee in October, and it's all about this
Off Broadway. Awesome.
Broadway,
Awesome
right? It's supposed to be this one area where it's just vibrant,
It
there's
is.
no cars and everything else, and it's where you want to be.
Yeah.
And when you go to Arizona and where the heck were we? Scottsdale, whatever. Whole strip there where it's all the
Yeah. Old
Dierks
Town.
Bentley bars. Yeah, all that stuff, right? But then you go here, and it's just like.
But very different policies. Like we've been to both, but Nashville, like on Broadway, there's just cops every block. If you're too drunk, you get hauling out. We watched people would be stumbling on the street, they get picked up, they're taken away by a paramedic, and they're driven right out.
Excellent.
So they have
That's almost the
they
best
have a
plan. It's
zero
like a free Uber
tolerance.
home. They get you with some.
Yeah, they have zero
IV.
tolerance for any issues. There's police, like squads, like we're talking 8 to 10 police per squad every half a block, and people just don't mess around.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I think it's also they have concealed carry, so that could be another issue.
Probably
but,
helps a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a totally different. It's just a totally different vibe. It's safe, whereas
It's
you would
made
go,
for that. Like they
it's
put
made
that-
for it
yeah.
because it's a tourist destination. But when you come here in Granville Street, you're like, hey, am I going to get stabbed or shot this weekend?
Well, what am I
So
stepping
I'm not
in?
gonna
What's
go.
that smell?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. There's no
please don't touch me.
real protection.
Yeah, yeah.
I just don't know if they don't have the numbers to do it. But none of us, I think, would really travel there in our time to go,
also-
except for the rec room.
Mid-40s. Yeah, I'm not going back.
40s, yeah,
there.
I'm not
Right?
going back.
different stage in life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different stage.
But I am going to continue to read this downtown report. As I said, it just came out today, but I do want to touch base on it next time we go into it and go from there. But I just want to touch base on it because I do think, being Vancouverites, whatever you call us, seeing our background here where we are, Granville's an important thing to us, right? Entertainment, bringing people here, tax dollars.
I think bringing people together in general.
Yeah.
So if you go back in Vancouver, one of the highlights of the Olympics was like what they called it. There was some term, but they had like gathering places at the end of the day. So like
Houses?
David Land Park was one, right?
Yeah, the tents. You go in there and hang out. Yeah.
It's tough, and like they tried that with the Grey Cup too a little bit, but it's difficult because people generally like to gather. So you've got the jazz festivals and different things, but Vancouver downtown has seemed to be a little bit more lifeless than full of life at the end of the day.
We haven't had a fireworks show in how many years on New Year's? They've canceled all of that.
Have they?
Right? Yeah, we didn't have a fireworks show at Canada Place.
Funny,
It was
I-
another year.
They had sponsors, but they fed what was it, the policing cost, and that was going to be too great.
Yeah.
Our videographer and editor, he's the exact age of someone to go visit Granville. Do you visit it?
Donovan's Irish pub.
Oh, because you're Irish. So that makes sense, right? That's like home to you.
Yeah.
Besides that, not really. Though.
And the second Irish, do you ever go there?
That's a shithole.
Yeah, it's a shithole. See? And that's your target demographic for entertainment nightlife.
And you wonder why 30% is vacant in terms of storefront.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right, we'll read into it more. We want to talk today about down payments because, let's face it, your average person's absolutely fucked for a down
Yeah.
payment. Lending gift rules, alternate down payment options. This is all you, James. Me and Brian go get a beer at the Irish pub.
Yeah.
We'll be back in about a half hour when you're done wrapping this up. Okay.
I'll make it streamlined. Is what we're seeing is the main source of down payments are gifts by parents. Where we're looking at I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we're looking at the average gifts in British Columbia are like over $250.
Gift.
Gift for down payment, because that does fall under tax rule that parents can gift their child money without getting dinged by the CRA. So essentially kind of this living will transfer of wealth.
How
and they're
long,
putting
how
it in
long
real
till that
estate.
loophole is closed, I'm sure.
Well, we'll know in 20 days if it's going to be closed
Yeah.
or if it will remain open.
We're saving
right?
that hot topic for the end
Saving
of the
that hot
podcast.
topic for the end.
Yeah.
You know, so where the down payment, I mean, as long as you have an immediate family member, you know, gift you money for a property that, you know, CMHC, if it's insured, or if it's, you know, a conventional loan, there's no issues. It's a gift letter, it's a deposit. You know, only rarely if it's saying coming from overseas, you know, it needs to be in Canada for 30 days. Sometimes they'll ask for history from the country that it's originating from. That outside of, you know, you obviously know embargoed countries, so Iran and Russia are having difficult times getting money out of there. You know, but that is predominantly the way the youth are purchasing property. I mean, we have a few clients right now, and I'm saying, well, where's your down payment? They're like, we got $50K here, and our parents are going to give us $200.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, like that is the norm because that is
I
the
know these
only way.
parents have $200K cash laying around. They're got to be pulling equity line of credits or something. They're
Well,
not going to have cash.
I
Really?
mean, yeah. I mean, the parents do have cash. They've purchased multiple properties in their time. I mean, when you know, when you're looking just on salaries, you know, how much farther salaries went. You know, they didn't have stress tests. Lawyers' salaries back in, you know, the 90s were still 150K. And I mean, when you had houses sitting at 250, 300K that they've then sold for $3-4 million and then bought another property. They do have cash. Now, the odd parent will refinance, you know, their property to do it. But they look at it as saying, well, I'm refinancing the house now as opposed to when I pass away, you know, theoretically there's no primary residence tax as of now, but we know that the NDP provincially are actively writing a bill to change that, and that's been confirmed by two conservative MLAs.
Absolute nightmare.
It's just how do we squeeze every cent out of everybody that has money in this province, and I think ultimately that's the death of it. But
Death by taxes, if you will.
death by taxes.
Zoom in on that bad boy.
That's what it is.
Yeah, so down payment rules, very, very simple, but it's so common. I rarely see the youth under the age of 30, even under the age of 35, have enough to, forget about 20%, forget about 20%, but actually have enough to service income versus the debt ratios.
That's the real issue, right? And there's no other options for this right now, right? Like you can't, like I remember back in the heyday, it would be lower, like the Scotiabank had some 5% or 0% down thing. There's none of those anymore.
No.
The qualifications have all changed.
Yeah, no, they don't. You know, banking doesn't allow it. OSFI doesn't allow it. It's just the what were they the Big Short, the ninja loans, no income, no job.
We all
problem.
What about the NIC loans? So back, you know, pre-US recession at the end of the day, you know, you could show up with 35% down and they give you whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and those were the equity loans. Those programs, it's quite unfortunate because those programs actually helped a lot of people, you know, purchase homes because if you know your rates are high and the income's high, it means your debt servicing is out. But if you have, you know, over 250,000, you would be approved under the high net worth program. So recently, Scotiabank and TD Bank were jockeying for position. TD changed their high net worth program to mimic Scotia's, and then Scotia just said, no, instead of 90-day history, we want 12 months. Well, what that's really done is it's taken out anybody in commission sales.
Yep.
Because how does a commission salesperson consistently have, you know, the net worth requirement versus saying, hey, I worked on a deal for 2 years, it's going to be realized, going to make $500,000.
Yeah.
And that should
Gravy's
be able
coming.
to qualify.
Just takes
Gravy's
a while,
coming,
right?
But Scotiabank says no. Now TD Bank's the only one that's doing that. You know, now we've signed up with another lender, Manulife Bank, actually has some really, really good high net worth business for self programs, best rates.
Manulife Bank?
Yeah.
I thought they were just insurance or something.
Well, they want market share. We've probably sent them at least 10 deals in the last 2 weeks. So they are kind of our new friend.
Go-to.
And their programs
Really?
are really solid.
They're
Rates are
aggressive,
so
yeah.
competitive. Versus say other banks going the other way. Manulife is paying brokers more, right? When TD is looking to pay brokers less. And, you know, Scotia's changed programs. Manulife is saying, no, we want 90 days. If this makes sense, great, because ultimately, you know, the equity programs that died out after the financial crisis, they came back under high net worth programs.
Sure.
Well, OSFI is essentially the regulator of banks through mortgage rules,
sure.
right? So the government watchdog.
Not any different than BCFSA.
Yeah, BCFSA, but just on a federal level. So they really look at banking programs. They're still government run, right? So
smart decisions.
You know, what we're seeing with OSFI is they've come out, you know, they were the genius idea of the stress test. Okay, they've recently came out and said, well, nothing really materialized. So let's do something different. Let's look at loan to income, and they're calling it the LOI ratio. And they're saying, well, if somebody takes a loan out that's more than 4.5 times their income, that's too risky. We're not going to allow it. We now want to tell the banks that they can't have a certain percentage of those loans based on their portfolios per year. So what it's doing is you're actually looking at the government actively trying to redistribute wealth through the banks by saying, well, no, if you declare as a self-employed person 200 grand, but you need 2 million, no, you need to declare 350 and pay us more tax. Then you get qualified. So that's what I look at OSFI's program with this LOI ratio, because talking to the major banks, I said, what's your default rate on high net worth programs? They're like, it's so negligible, it's not even a number. Okay, so somebody that has 35% down in real estate, number one's not going to walk away. And number two, they also had to qualify with a net worth over 250,000. So somebody that has cash is now seen by the government as, oh, you shouldn't have that much cash, you need to pay more tax, because you're using an unfair loophole that other people don't get. So we're looking, I look at OSFI as absolutely predatory to people that are, you know, self-employed, have commission income, or just have cash through, you know,
you're making too much money.
You're making too much money. You need to declare more taxes.
They want to rake more.
Yeah,
yeah.
They want a piece.
They want more.
Pound of flesh.
And I mean, at that point, you can say, well, you know, this system's capitalist. You're always going to have, you know, different sets of people being successful, and to say to the banks that you need to regulate, which becomes a really big issue in Vancouver and Toronto. When you're looking at say somebody with a $100,000 income only can do a $450,000 mortgage, let me know where you're buying, because it will be somewhere
I'll buy 4 of them.
Yeah, it'll be probably in Chilliwack, Langley, nowhere near where they work.
Yeah.
Hope. Now they got to drive to work, and I mean it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's their new MO. So they want to change the stress test. And the understanding is that OSFI is going to really roll that out in Q2, Q3. And the stress test may go away, but that's the new stress test is LOI.
Really?
And it's going to be absolutely detrimental unless we potentially get a change in government that doesn't look at individuals doing well as the problem, because it doesn't help anybody.
Well, that's the next question then. So if we're talking bank of mom and dad, and they've got a bunch of cash laying around, is there any downfalls to taking a cash bank of mom and dad situation?
No, I think it's really the only way that you.
It's the norm now.
It's the norm,
right?
Okay.
You look at all the young families that are getting into homes. At the end of the day, typically maybe, you know, if they're in their earlier 40s like myself, they may have climbed a couple ladder rungs in the real estate market, but they still need family help in order to get to that house.
Well, your bread and butter is Yaletown down here, Brian. So you've seen people, like, how many years have you been down here working,
13
dominating?
now.
13? Yeah. So you've seen, even before that, the people who bought here 20 years ago, and everyone said, oh, you're nuts for buying $200,000 condo down here, whatever the heck it was. And now they're worth...
But the numbers worked back then. I mean, you could buy, I remember when Rennie was marketing Yaletown Park 1, 2, and 3, and when they launched Yaletown 1, you could buy a 1-bedroom in there for sub $200,000.
Oh.
Right? You know, those suites...
That'd be amazing.
They peaked in 2018 at $700K, and they sit around $650 to $680 today. So they haven't fallen off considerably. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, but also back then you could also qualify on a 35% NIC loan.
Exactly.
Right? So those that took risks were rewarded. But now how does that young 28-year-old that's come out of school with possibly student loans, maybe not, look at a $700,000 or $800,000 condo as their first home? And where does that property gain in value for them to climb the next ladder rung up?
Well, I don't think we're going to see any of those mass runs we've had of property gains. I think they're so high now. You're not going to see the gold rush we've had since 2000 to 2020, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think the market saw the better part of 2 decades of significant growth. The builders, the developers now can't build at profit. They can't sell to 65% sold on, you know, massive condo sites at this time. So a lot of them are sitting out, even if the provincial government is screaming at them and saying that they need to build. But that's a another conversation. And at the end of the day,
ridiculous one.
it's tough because Vancouver is an intake city. So you're going to continue to bring in and attract talent possibly from around the world if our tax systems allow them to want to come here. And ultimately, if you're going to bring people in, it's going to put pressure on housing. But if they can't afford, then they're going to have to go into rentals, and there's not many cranes out building rentals at the end of the day because rents have fallen, and the private sector can't make the numbers work. So it's going to be a cluster for the next while.
Where was the article I saw? We need 22,000 more, 22,500 units more per year in BC, Metro Vancouver alone.
Yeah.
And it's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen because, as Brian said, the numbers don't work.
The last boom we had of that was in 1979, 80 or something.
Well, even on the CMHC MLI Select program, I mean, they came out with that, and a ton of people thought, oh, this is the next big boom. But all of those rental rates are going to come off on the performas. You know, they changed the allocations in terms of percentages on what needs to be met on it. So, again, you're seeing a bit of that in the West End, but not en masse at the end of the day. The only one you will see en masse is the Indigenous sites.
Yes.
Right? So you've got obviously what's going on by the Burra Bridge and what will happen in the Jericho lands.
You saw the Jericho lands there, that city they're building.
Yeah, spectacular at the end of the day.
We'll see if it happens.
And that will likely be the catalyst to get the train out to UBC.
Yeah.
Right? Because the train got announced to Arbutus, and then NIMBY said, it's going to Arbutus, no further. But the fact that the Indigenous lands over in Jericho, that will likely allow the train line to get done out to UBC.
There you go. There's another article that came on the Globe and Mail, and I've been wanting to talk about this one since we got sick, since after. Is desperate pre-construction home buyers are trying to get out of their contracts. This was a person in somewhere in Ontario, Toronto area, and this one irked me because for years we've seen people cleaning up, as we said, and they're buying pre-construction in 2012 and then flipping it again, then you take possession 2016. How much equity did they make, and how well did most did well? I see Brian.
Oh, I mean, you think pre-U.S. recession? I mean, that was a boom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at the assignment markets back then. You know, people would buy and flip and trade paper multiple times,
Like
right?
6, 7.
100%
right?
at the end of the day, and it's tough because purchasers have to realize, and this is always interesting because I think some of the good developers are very good at creating fear of loss. And at the end of the day, when you're buying a pre-sale, you're buying a stack of paper that gives you rights to purchase that property X years later for said price.
Yes.
And that stack of paper is written by the developer's lawyers for the developer. It's
100%.
not written for you, the purchaser. You have the rescission period under what is REDMA to make sure that you can think about your position and did you do the right thing. You can talk to your friends and family and maybe anyone else that wants to talk about it.
Your crystal ball, throw your dice,
But
your chicken bones
once
down.
that 7-day rescission period is over,
Yep.
you are locked in.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, and you cannot predict the ebbs and flows of the financial markets, of the real estate markets, of the government interaction in the real estate markets. So at the end of the day, once that rescission period is over, you are now hook, line, and sinker, and you can hope that it will work out. But as we've seen in the last 4 to 5 years, many have not had it work out.
Well, and I've just seen so many people where it's just been so gravy for so long that now couple people are now going to the media outlets crying wolf because for the first time in so long they have not made a profit on this. And then they're asking developers now, like when developers lose money, does anyone complain to them? No, developers are always vilified on this, right? But then a buyer, I'm not making as much, I'm underwater on this. Well, there's no guarantee in anything, stock, trades, whatever you want to do.
I mean, some of the thing. So there's that aspect.
Yes.
You have the developer saying, you're not going to close, you're going to walk away. We reserve the right to sue. We'll keep the deposit.
Yep.
But I go the other way. It's on the onus of the purchaser to ensure that they qualify. And I witnessed some situations in North Van.
You must see some weird ones.
I was scratching my head looking at. I would flip the other way. I looked at this borrower and I said, I think you should sue the realtor. There was a number of incidences that a certain realtor, it's not public, but it's every single one that I had across my desk.
Keep it quiet.
No, right? I wouldn't do that. But this individual had said to a group of buyers, friends, connections through the Iranian community that all of you are going to make money, all of you are going to qualify, don't worry about it.
Guaranteed.
I looked at their qualifications. It was, when it came time to close, they didn't make any money. I had reached out to the individual that was selling this and I said, did you qualify any of these people? Did you tell them to get qualified? And they're like, no, they're going to make, that's not my problem.
Pre-sale. It's
That's
easy.
not my problem.
Come on.
And I looked at this and I said, well, every single one of those buyers is underwater
Yeah.
and they cannot close. And they would be pushed to private mortgages, which are, you need 35%. So they say they only put 10%, which is contract. It's like, cool, come up with another 25, all your closing costs, and then prove to the private lender that you are going to pay, which you won't.
What would a private lender just?
Well, they'll go on lesser,
Interest
so
rate.
they always go on lesser, a private lender?
Yeah, like what's
13 and a half.
Higgins Mortgage Co. is going to give
You're probably in
first
these
position.
climates. You got to be first with what, a 65% loan to value ratio to starting in 11.
11 to 13.5%, 13.95.
With a deal fee of 2 or 3%.
Yeah. So then you're looking at these individuals who closed, who went the private route, who said, okay, whatever. I mean, but they had to come up with the property they bought wasn't worth what they bought it for. So now the lenders only lend on the lesser of the purchase or the appraised value.
Yep.
So $100,000 less. So not only on top of the 25% they got to come up with, then they got to come up with another $100,000 to close. Those people would walk away. But say say appraisal did come in at contract value. So those individuals now come up with the additional 25% on their 10%. If the developer did that 10%, most are trying to do 20 or 15.
But some of those pre-sale
they're underwater.
realtors, they go back to the developer, they negotiate a bigger commission for themselves. They also negotiate a lower deposit structure for their purchasers to make it more
bringing in a
palatable,
heavy amount,
right? And at the end of the day, I mean, look at one recently that traded out Kangokuma. There was a studio 1-bedroom that contract price showed with taxes in, the purchaser paid over $1.8 million. That's
studio 1-bedroom
at Kangokuma. That suite just sold on MLS for sub $900,000. So that purchaser back then lost $1 million. They lost over 50% of the price of the property when they bought it pre-sale and sold it at resale.
Still, what's a
6
studio
years later.
Is it 1-bedroom or a studio?
I mean, the challenge
Studio
now
one-bedroom.
is
We've
what
made
the
this.
city used to regulate.
Yeah.
Now you see total square footage. I mean, the developers 25 years ago got lambasted by the city and said, no, you need to market as the strata plan square footage.
Yes.
You cannot market your balcony space. But look at some of the floor plans that are out there by some of the major
it's-
developers. It comes out as total square footage.
Yeah.
But when you go to strata plan, that's not total square footage.
I'm going to rent on my patio with a tent.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, look at how they got,
Never know, mate.
now you see glass walls for bedrooms,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what is legally defined as a bedroom, I now start to question, is that actually a bedroom?
Las Vegas, sexy showers.
Sure, 100%, yeah.
Yeah, so it is quite a sad situation, but I think it goes back to if it's too good to be true, it probably is, right? To say to somebody, you put 10%, you're going to earn 30. It's like, okay, well, what am I going to lose? Well, what do I have? What's the risk?
No
well,
one
the
ever
risk
talks about
is
risk.
nobody
Every
talks about the
developer will just
risk,
tell you about
right? And
the profit and how great
Yeah.
this area is and what's coming to this
Yeah.
community, what else is being built.
Yeah.
But then also, you can't foresee risk as well a lot.
No, you can't. But the one thing that you could do is saying if somebody says you're going to make money on paper, being like, cool, I'm going to go talk to somebody that isn't you.
Well, yeah.
Get qualified
Yes.
to even say I can do this. Because again, you're looking at, can I qualify for a mortgage in 4 years? Well, I can tell you it seems that every year our industry is under assault by the government in some capacity, yet there's never been a mass mortgage default in Canada. Banks haven't lost, billions and billions of dollars, but somehow they always think it's our problem or our issue or people are, whatever it is. And that's
You're
always been a
screwing the system
frustrating.
somehow. We get
Yeah,
it.
it's always been a little frustrating, and LOI is kind of like the next thing. But where I think purchasers always need to vet who you're working with, but also cover your ass, make sure you qualify.
That should be the name of the podcast.
And do your research at the end of
Yeah.
the day, right? Because keep in mind, the agent that may be selling you in on this great pre-sale opportunity is getting paid a commission.
Yep.
So maybe a smart purchaser is going to do research that is not just provided by said pre-sale expert.
Well, yes, because won't get into their expert ability, but that should be the name of our podcast. Seek independent legal advice. Just get the disclaimer right out of the way, and that's just what it's called, right?
Do we have a lawyer in the office?
We
We should.
No, I can be.
Oh, actually, we
I'm a
have one
pre-sale
down the
lawyer.
hallway.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
We're good.
So there is the CREA. This is just for the realtors. So if you're a realtor listening to this, if you know or don't know or care or could care less, I didn't know this was happening today, but Brian, there is the CREA AGM happening right now. And they are going to be adding a $75 special legal assessment to our bill. They are going to be doing a new member fee hike, going from $200 to $500, starting June 2025. $200 to $500. You get it. That's not a 5% increase. That's not a 10%.
150% increase.
Exactly. That is insane. And this is why real estate is such big money in Canada. They're doing some bylaw amendments. I'm just going to read this here. One change aims to prevent CREA directors from serving on boards or being employees of local or provincial associations or MLS-related entities. That actually makes sense. You got a conflict of interest, I guess,
Fair.
in some way. And then they're doing director elections. But didn't Toronto Real Estate Board and Vancouver Real Estate Board want to leave CREA at one point? We were all voting on it.
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
no
you
support for
you
this?
don't see CREA mentioned all that much in all
I
honesty.
haven't heard CREA be relevant in, like, what have they done
I mean,
besides?
if anything, the province within BC has come in under BCFSA to better safeguard consumer, and typically most of what we
Have they?
operate within, I think so.
Yeah?
I think there's been attempts to, for sure.
Attempts. Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that word, attempts.
So
That's a good word.
I think in theory some of the documentation, I think the cooling off period, it's an interesting one because the rescission period on the contract, or the cooling off period, if you would, is smart at the end of the day. I don't know if that 72 hours is technically long enough.
2 days, 72 hours, yeah, 2 days.
But I mean, I think it should be 5 business days. If you're in a non-subject competing offer with multiple bids, I think that if you're,
I think we missed the mark on the time to have that in effect, though.
Yeah.
Because we had such a booming market to the early 2012 to 17, that area, right, where it was just
Go
multiple offers.
COVID though. I mean, go
Yeah,
COVID, and that COVID market was crazier
Crazy
than the
it
new
was,
market.
But then they put this in after that.
Of course. I mean, we had a house in Grand Boulevard in Central Lonsdale where we had
offers?
187 showings in 1 week. We had 29 offers. We had 16 unconditional. We had 9 with deposit check
Really?
on one property. Property
This
sold
was
for
what year?
This was the first couple of months of 2022, right before inflation came in. So this was the tail end of the COVID run.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, we had the property sell for in excess of 30% over the asking price.
Jeez.
Right.
Unbelievable.
So it sold $617,000 over asking.
But once again, we were too late. The BCFA was too late on the mark to put that.
But that's always the case when the government
Yeah,
interacts,
it's always,
right?
right?
Let's go back to the
They laid
foreign
it
buyer
above short.
tax. Let's go back to the empty homes tax. Let's go back to the speculation tax.
I'll pose a question. Why don't they just match pre-sale 7 days? Why don't we make it 7 days across the board?
10
What do you
day
think?
rescission period.
Yeah, I mean,
Sunday.
at the end of the day, I mean, I think 5 business days, because the
business Friday.
idea of weekends and holidays not counting is garbage.
Yeah.
Days are days are days at the end of the
Well,
day.
then we can't work as brokers. So for us, and if somebody says you got 7 days, it's really you got
But look at
5
the real
days.
estate
So
professional.
I would say 5 business days.
A good realtor works 365, 24/7.
No, that's the dumb ones.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the ones
Exactly.
that are, yeah. I always say to our realtors, don't do that. Because you know who else works really hard? Your clients.
Yeah.
The guy doing his landscaping job, running his own business, everything, they work really hard as well.
Yeah.
Then you sit there and you complain. Anyways, we won't get into this. It's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
different. but
Yeah.
That's another bitch fest and a hot topic.
Let's do it.
Exactly.
Okay. There's no shortage, and I guess this is when we need to have that little TikTok voice give me a disclaimer and go, Prompton Real Estate Services has no opinion on the politics, blah, 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 blah. Voice of God, whatever
Yeah,
you call it.
yeah,
So this is opinions. Whatever. James, liberal versus conservative housing plan. This is where we want. I just throw it out there. Just
I mean,
Like-
it's utterly shockingly stupid
okay, for which one?
on the liberal one.
Okay.
Because he basically regurgitated, we're going to build 500,000 homes a year.
How?
We haven't built.
How?
Yeah, but great. We're going to build 500,000 homes a year. Okay, first of all, not feasible, never been done. The most we ever built, I think, was in 1972. So we got one
It
problem
was
there.
in the 70s or somewhere.
So in the 70s, so we got a problem there. Then he
it
was
was like
saying,
144,000, I think it was.
well, of the homes, then he's saying we're going to use federal lands. So that was a regurgitation of Pierre's policy. We're going to release federal lands to build housing. But his idea is even worse. He wants to build these mass social housing complexes. So everybody is not going to own anything. The government's going to own it, and you're going to be happy. So let's regurgitate where that came from. I mean, how did social housing work when New York did it in the 70s?
Yep.
They turned them effectively into ghettos.
Yep.
So, and then he comes in and so we're going to take GST off new homes for first-time buyers only.
Up to how
Up
much
to
was it?
1 million.
1 million, yeah.
For only first-time buyers.
Only first-time
buyers. But his original one was to match Poilievre's, so he regurgitated that, and then he just threw in Trudeau's plan, but then threw in that it's going to be social housing. Crazy. Then he wants to, and I mentioned this the last podcast was last time I looked, the government doesn't have a development team. He now wants to start a Canadian development team. Where you're going to get the workers, how are you going to house the workers, are you going to offer more money than private developers to build these, social housing units for people? I mean, this arguably the stupidest thing ever launched in the history of Canadian housing policy was solely put on him.
But when Trudeau made the announcement on his housing policy,
but it was also crazy. It was
was he
not
going to build
feasible.
3.2 million homes within a 10-year period?
Well, Jags-
Show me how many homes are actually built.
Well,
It's just cheap words.
Not
at
that
the end
many.
of the
Well,
day.
it is because, and that's what makes it so frustrating. Is you're looking at these polls and saying, how can anybody support a housing plan that is not feasible?
Okay, but that's a
under
liberal.
any metric.
That's a liberal then, so you say
Yeah,
that.
so that's a liberal.
So what's the conservative?
So now the
I haven't had a
conservative.
chance I downloaded it. I haven't read it yet.
It's much more simple. It goes, we'll take GST off new housing for anyone.
Okay.
Up to 1.3.
1.3.
What that does is it allows the private sector to then determine what they build. So isn't that logical that the ones building the housing says, okay, the incentive from the government is no GST, so what I'm going to do is build 80% of the building under 1.3, and then I'm going to build the other 20% as the 3 bedrooms, and they're going to be a little bit more money, and that's great.
Then are you getting your family housing then? It's devil's advocate, right?
Well,
Because you have family housing, you can't just
you
build all one
could.
bed.
But the challenge is if we're talking in Vancouver,
Yeah.
now you've got a landlocked region where the majority of homes have been single-family homes.
Yep.
Right? And now those single-family homes are sky high in value, and you are seeing change with the multiplex and different ways to try and
Not
create
too
housing.
diverse. I want to ask though, as a realtor in the business and seeing this, have you seen any of this take effect? These multiplex in the Vancouver West, Vancouver East.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah?
I just had clients
We're
that
gonna
bought
get
in.
back to
I
the
just had
debate.
clients that bought into Mount Pleasant on a back unit on a 4-plex site.
Okay.
At the end of the day, so when you look at it, really, what's happening in Vancouver West, the duplex is becoming the new single family.
Okay.
Right. So in theory, the purchasers, based on single family pricing, if you're into Kitsilano or Mackenzie Heights or wherever you're going to be, a single family home at $3 million isn't possible with
$3
a
million.
significant
Yeah.
gift money from family at the end of the day.
Significant.
Significant, right? So and significant earning potential between the two parents at the same time too.
Yeah, no, like,
All right, back
yeah,
to
the housing.
conservative.
And the other thing that I would really, look at is one thing that we also have in Vancouver, same, families have owned, multiple properties and investments. Well, they don't want to sell them because then they pay a capital gain, but when they die, they pay the capital gain. Well, who's going to pay the capital gain? The inheritor is
Yes.
going to pay it. Now, Poilievre's back as well said, we will take off capital gains if you reinvest in Canada.
This is a
What you
game
will
changer.
See is I can tell you, I know clients that have 60 units right around us. If they are able to release those units, they can release them at a good price to first-time buyers or to any buyer or any
To the market.
immigrant to the
Yeah,
market,
okay.
and they can then go reinvest in some type of development. Because
Or
they
Canadian
can-
asset. It's
or
not
Canadian
only real
asset. So I'm
So
looking
it could be any Canadian.
it's a
asset.
multi
You're rolling it forward.
issue where you say like you have all of these units that are rented right now, but they're owned by somebody, and
Yes.
some of these individuals got in for 99 grand,
That's what I'm saying. People are
$160,000.
They want to release that
Yeah.
because then what you can do is if you release the equity and they can go develop it, or they can say to their child, here's a great one. Instead of me refinancing my house, I'm going to release one of my 10 apartments that I own that I bought for nothing, and lucky me, I got to keep them.
Or blueberries and
now
handshake.
I'm going to put that into your single family.
Yeah.
Boom. And then what happens is you defer the gain until the child sells. So you're looking at it as he is going, that plan is so logical that it's going to spur new housing, but it's also going to spur investment into Canada, where you're looking at one of those GoFundMes of saying, Canada is not getting outside investment. We've lost $500 billion in the United States. Our GDP per capita is as good as Luxembourg over the last 10 years. What does Luxembourg do? stolen art and banking. I mean, like, what are we talking
Casinos.
about? So you're looking at it as saying Canadians are going to be able to fund Canadians because there is wealth here.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most logical housing plan
That's probably the
that
most-
has ever been launched in Canadian history, honestly. And I really hope we
Do
see
we
it.
think the government has the ability to track this, though?
Well, they do.
At the end of the day, it's going to be coming down to the accountants that are filing for your tax
Absolutely,
position.
yeah.
So it is trackable
Yeah.
for
It's
sure.
trackable.
But the amount of flow that this can create, this policy is probably one of the biggest aspects to real estate that we will have ever seen in our potential
To
lifetimes.
reiterate it, I own said condo in Yaletown down here. I bought it False Creek, $99,000 back in the day. It's
Yeah.
now worth 1.9.
Yep.
Paid off 20 years ago, right? And so I sell that, no capital gains. And I
Well,
If it's not
no,
your
if
primary.
it wasn't your primary.
Not your primary, it's investment.
It's
So
investment,
now,
sell it.
as long as you reinvest that
Yes.
in Canadian,
So the accountant would need
can
to
be
do
Canadian
a,
stock, it
a
can give-
6224B form, whatever it is, that claims I've taken $1.9 million, 1.7, whatever it is, and I put this into $1 million of whatever.
Yeah, so what the Conservatives are posing is they're going to have marked Canadian investments. That you
That's
can
what
put
I'm
it in.
saying, yeah.
So you could take the 1.9.
Like, do
say
I
you
buy
had two
Rogers
kids.
telecommunications
Well, you could,
stock?
yeah,
or-
you could do whatever you want.
100%.
But you could say to both kids and say, look, this was the investment property. I'm going to give. You're going to get a house. You're going to get a house, and I'm going to invest back in the Canadian economy. And now what you're doing is you just deferred the game, because I think what also people should be talking about is, as the baby boomers die, these gains are realized.
Yes.
Which means it's
How many
immediate.
trillions did they say is
But
out
the
there?
question is, how is that group of whoever inherits it going to pay them?
Yeah.
Right? Now you need to start selling property. So the government just gets their tax money because you've sold a property on the gain, death tax, inheritance tax, whatever else they can think
and
of.
wasn't that gain
But
supposed
none
to
of
go
it
to
goes back in the
66%? When Christopher Friedland floated last year, the idea of the capital gains going to 66%
Yeah.
over 250,
Call
like
it
absurd.
100 and let's change our flag to a hammer and sickle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's crazy.
Comrade.
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 Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's quick takes on the liberal versus conservative housing plan. Once again, we have no opinion, just honest debate and thoughts. It doesn't make sense, though, to...
The amount of equity that would flow through markets by that angle is monstrous.
You will get the housing boom. You will get people into housing. You will get, and by the way, it won't be social housing. It won't be 400 square feet and you're going to
won't
be
be
happy
government-owned
owning
housing.
nothing.
Yeah.
It's true housing. And it's some of these units are 750 square feet back in those days. That's good. That's good for a startup family, not on government lands in a shoebox that you don't own. I
Well, let's
think
say
it's crazy.
for myself, I'm not a rich man, but I've got 2 kids, and I want to get them a condo a 2-bedroom now. I go through Congo Pacific, I buy something, I hold on to it for X number of years. They live in it, they go travel, they do their thing. They're not getting the money right away, but then they come to me and they say, "Dad, I'm in love. I'm going to marry this person, whatever it is. I'm going to start a family." At that point, you sell said property. You don't have to pay the capital gains.
You would just transfer it to them through
No, but
titles.
I got 2 kids, so I want to sell it.
Yeah.
Give them.
Give them the money. Yeah.
Give them money, right?
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
paying capital gains as long
Yeah.
as they go take that money, or through me,
Through you.
buy
and-
another condo.
As Pierre said, the tax will get collected at some point, but what it does allow is it allows the flow into the next and into the next. So if you look at it in terms of generating true, generational wealth, it's significant instead of paying out the government every time you do it, and now you can't
Exactly.
make the transaction.
It stifles disbursement of investments because you're going to allow the economy to grow through investments from Canadians, because Canadians arguably still want to be here, the ones that haven't left. And if you allow them to sell those assets to the next generation gets to be the custodians and invest in other projects, or invest in development, or invest just in Canadian companies through startup, through the NASDAQ, through whatever means they're able to do. That is true wealth for a country, because you just can't, taxing your country into prosperity is like standing in a bucket and trying to pull it up. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we really need to think of something brand new.
Well, I think you've also got to look at it, not to get this as a whole different topic, but we can't rely on just our one trade partner and everything else down how it's been working.
Absolutely.
Right?
Diversification.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So we can't just what's been working.
It doesn't work anymore.
Hasn't
It's
been
broken.
working.
It's shattered. And I mean, the thing we're looking at, it's not even like I favor this political party over this political party. By every factual metric, over the last 10 years, we have failed every metric. Not a single one is positive. So if you're looking at that, and I'm on the fence, just look at the last 10 years. Tariffs haven't been in the last 10 years. Is your life better?
Is your life better after 8 years?
How
10
about-
years. I'm going to say 8 years.
Is their life better? Is the young kids better?
Is there opportunity better at the end of the day? I was driving into work today this morning, and what did it say? That 10 years ago, the average family pays $10,000 more a year in tax than they did 10 years ago. Now, what do we get at the end of the day besides bureaucracy?
I got in the hell. I got to go see my doctor 2 weeks later. It was great.
How long did you have to wait for?
2 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
For my cough, right? So I think it was Ron, the mortgage guy. I think we all listened to him, and he
Butler,
said it.
yeah.
He's one of my favorite. And he just said it that way. He says, it's been 8 years. Is your life better?
Yeah.
Right? And that's just all you got to think about. If your life's better, excellent. Vote. Vote however you want. No matter what, vote however you want. But I think that's a good way to take away from it for people who are wondering which way to go. That's all you got to think about, right? Is your life better? How's that 52% tax bracket treating you?
And what happens to the younger generation? Because if life isn't better now, what's life going to look like for them?
And that's the thing. It's not is my life better as a crusting, nearing 40-year-old on But it's like when I look and talk to even guys in this office that are young, there's not a lot of hope in their eyes.
No.
And to me, I think that you should judge. A generation should judge itself on how it left the previous generation. Yep. And this generation, in my opinion, really is quite demoralized.
Well, because you need how much for a down payment, right? Like
Yeah.
$250,000. It's
20
insane.
years.
$200,000,
saving.
and it's nuts. So, anyways, that is. I think that's been about an hour. That's all I got brain space for. It's been a blast, like always. James and Brian, thank you for joining me, and we will be back next Tuesday. And when do we release this? Putting you on the spot.
This week?
Sure. No, I need a day, time. Fine, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get this figured out. We need a plan.
Today
Right.
at 5.
Sure. We need some sort of set time. We will release all this fun information to you. And once again, that is the Prompton Podcast. Bye.
See you.